So as we go to line up topics today, one of those topics is learn.layer5.io. We'll hear from Austin, and we'll hear from probably Vinayak and maybe Tanuj as well. That I expect that might be something of a big one. That's good. It's a big project, which also means that there are others like Blossom or Aditya or basically everybody on the call is welcome to engage. We've really, that effort has yet well, the implementation has yet to start, but Austin has been through a couple of rounds of design, and so he's going to take us through some of that today. And between Vinayak and Tanuj, they might have been able to do some prototyping toward proof of concepts on how we might create some of the components that we're thinking we would like to have. Vinayak, Tanuj, Austin. And I think I'm getting the avatar right. Blossom is with us. Yep, that is Blossom. And so Blossom, I figured, well, we don't harass you enough in a loving way. We don't put your name on here and ask you to chat about some stuff that you're working on. So I figured we'll put you on the spot, and if you take a moment or two to think about either an open PR that you have or one that you recently closed, or a PR that's been merged, maybe we could take a moment to review it, chat through it. You could show off some of the good work that you've been doing. Right, and other topics include discuss.layer5.io, which we'll talk about it. Josh and I were able to spend a little bit of time together this weekend on it. So, other topics that we missed, though. Oh, yep, Vinayak's got one. Any other topics? Okay, good. So we've got Anita with us as well. Aditya, you've got a topic, right? The upgrade from 2.3 to 3.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Krishna. Okay. Well, Blossom, what do you know? Your name is first there on the list. Blossom, do we have any do you have any outstanding PRs that are still ready for or out there for review?
Yeah, I don't think the latest PR I made has been merged, though I did have to change a few things, but I don't think that has been merged yet. So that was making a mesh weight of the hair, making it more responsive. It wasn't really responsive on a mobile version. Can anyone hear me? Yeah. Okay, you're actually on it. Yeah, so I was to change the size of the image. It was still small on smaller screen, so it should be larger. And yeah, I've changed that. Though when I do want to push, since I can't create a new PR, I could not take screenshots of that. But I doubt you'll be able to see it now since it hasn't been merged yet.
Oh.
But yeah, this should be responsive. I don't think this has been merged too, so but it is responsive now. The screenshots are there. And okay, it has been merged. Okay, it has been merged now. Oh, cool.
Oh, it looks, ooh, yeah.
Yeah, so all I had to do, it was being displayed as flex on larger screen. So I just had to remove that property so it wouldn't display as flex on smaller screens just stacked on top of each other. So that's the major difference that I need there.
Gotcha. Yeah, a couple of questions for you, or well, actually, a comment just on the side of where you were focused, just related, and that is, well, there might be another issue that we're facing. For those that have the backstory here, Tanuj, do you know, have we looked at this before, or is this something that we haven't identified before?
This will be fixed if you reload the screen at this resolution. Basically, if you uh,
Right, I
uh,
remember now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you're on your mobile device, which is about this size, and you visit the page, when you come, get to the end, it'll look like this. If you're being cheeky, like me, and you're trying to test for responsiveness, you might find that isn't that's statically responsive, or not dynamically responsive. So okay, and then Blossom. So back to some of the items that you were working on. A couple of points of curiosity. Oh, there's a weird artifact that occasionally happens, and I'm assuming it's because we're using this block quote component, and one of the components is a subcomponent of the next, and they both use a lot of the same class names, CSS class names. And so you can see it happening here, that there's this style of quote, and there's two styles, that style and this style, and this one is like stuck in the middle between the two. It seems, if I refresh, okay. I'm curious for other people, as you visit this URL, the quote from Asuko, does it look like this to you? Because when I was
block code that's kind of like uh, mashed together, kind of. Yeah, it does begin that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Changed. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't. It's a little bit of a head scratcher because. But I guess I bring it up, one, because yeah, it would be good for us to correct. But two, it seemed like if I recall, I think this one is supposed to be of this style, and near as I can tell, like I was saying, it seems like occasionally when the site builds, it gets confused between which class has precedence over the next, or and I don't know if that's an artifact of the fact that there are subcomponents, like one component is a subcomponent of the next. So that's interesting
Right,
item.
So this block code now, it should be looking like, is it a block code above it or a block code beneath?
Yeah, we have to go to take a look. So there's kind of two things to examine. Okay, that's not it. Reuse core. All right, so just from the component perspective, there's some mesh mateiness going on here. From the component perspective, there's this block quote, and this index.js represents one of the block quotes, and then this alt style block quote represents the other one. Does anyone, Blossom or anyone else, familiar with potential challenge? Like, is that an okay thing for us to be doing? One, a component is like a child of the next. Are there known issues with that type of approach?
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, that's fine. Sometimes components do have sub-components and they have to have folders inside of them. So I don't think that's okay. It's not really, not necessarily a bad breaking.
Okay, Blossom, your voice cracked up a few times, but I think you more or less said, hey, that's okay. You can do that sort of a thing occasion, and then I kind of missed it. Were you saying sometimes you'll run into an issue?
No, I did say that sometimes components have sub-components and it is okay to put them like inside folder. So you are not, it's not like you're breaking any kind of rule. It is allowed. So yeah, that shouldn't cause a component to not function as it is supposed to.
Gotcha. Okay. So in of this blog post itself, when we look at, well, okay, so as we come down, there's this block quote from Pratik. There's this one from Michael. The two that we're looking at is the one from Rodolfo here. So it's the alt style. And then the very next one is supposed to be back to the first style from Asuko. And it may not have anything to do with one component being inside of the other one, being inside of the other one. It might have more to do with perhaps this not being the best CSS or. But yeah.
Yeah, I should look into it.
Okay. There's one thing that you'd had on your PR, this particular one. I thought you had a resource listed, and it was something to the effect of, here's a link to where you can see different versions of it. Okay. Note, responsiveness can be tested for multiple devices here. And so this is kind of nice. This is, I'm just now seeing this for the first time. I've never seen this tool. So Responsinator. Well, first of all, I like whoever does the names of these things. That's good. Responsinator. But Blossom, do you want to say a couple of words about the tool and how you use it?
Yeah, so for everyone who has front end or probably have front end, but responsinator.com is a tool where you can test responsiveness of the website. There are lots of them, but this is one I prefer. So all you have to do, if you can scroll a bit up, yeah, so all you have to do is paste in that URL and click on go, and then you see how well your site is doing on every kind of screen resolution. They have it on portraits, on landscape, so it makes development easy. And sometimes I find out that uh, moving my Chrome sizes, sometimes it doesn't capture exactly how a device looks. It's just this square and it has a limit. But with this, I can actually check every size. It's listed there, the kind of phone and their width, so the general one. So yeah, I mean, there are several, but this is just one that I really use and I prefer.
Does anyone else have a favorite one of these? This is nice. This is the smallest of, yeah, it'd be, I think even more helpful if they had just a little navigation menu so you can jump to your favorite or jump to the.
Yeah, right.
Right. They do let you, I guess, hone in on just one if that's the only one that you're interested in. So
Yeah.
that helps. Now the problem, so this works well for public sites that are publicly available, but then if you're trying to correct an issue and trying to figure out if you've gotten it, if you fixed it or not, Blossom, what do you usually do? Are you usually using Chrome at that point? And
Yeah, it does work for local files too. It works locally too, like the local host. Yeah, it works. It works for it too. But yeah, I do use Chrome too. Not that I don't never not use Chrome, because Chrome has a wide range of options. The Galaxy, the phones. I do use Chrome too, but yeah, I do use this one a lot too. So, but it does work for testing your local you developed files even before deploying them.
That's nice. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that. Yep. So they're just using JavaScript then. I mean, huh. Okay. Any other feedback for Blossom? Responsinator. Nice. Okay. Good. So I think Austin, Learn Layer 5 is up. Do you want to start off the conversation and walk people through designs? By the way, before we start, to Tanuj or Vinayak, do we have a design spec just yet? Or the start of one?
No, basically, before I write anything, I wanted to confirm a few things. If you are going to follow the storybook layout or something like
Right. So does anybody? Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and see if one of you guys has that storybook layout that we can take a quick look at. And
okay, sure. Uh, okay. So basically, what storybook this particular website is doing is that they have made this entire thing based on Gatsby, and almost everything they are doing through markdown files. So basically, they have this kind of a structure, some this kind of a structure. Like this first, you go from /tutorial, then these four are MD files, and inside that there are some tables of content. So this is the one top level. After that, if you go to this, then we have another level, and inside this there are multiple MD files. So basically, it is like uh, this is the top level intro to storybook. Then you go to different languages. Here it is React, and inside that, uh, if you want to go English, anything, uh, this English, and inside that all the different MD files here, like get started, simple component. So basically now, if this exact layout they have mapped it into some pre-existing templates and just queried the data from there and displayed it for all the pages. So basically now, every time they need to add a chapter or a new tutorial, they will just send a MD file. So the if we go to follow this layout, the the first thing should be, how many levels do we want. Should be that, depending on that we have to change that Gatsby node file to create that layout. uh, Another thing, if we follow this layout, one problem that we may run into in the future is that Gatsby is supposed to be a static site, and if we want to do something other which is not possible using a static site, then it may be a problem in the future.
Will it be possible if we use Next.js, since it's also a React-based framework?
Yeah, we can, but the main reason for looking into this was that the code was pretty
Is
similar
as
similar to what exactly we are doing in layer5.io,
yeah.
using the different how we are styling, how we style in layer 5. They also use the same way of styling, that style components. So if we go to follow this, then pulling layouts would be as simple as copy pasting their component and changing to our need.
Nice. Well, hey, I missed the last part of, are we sitting in silence waiting for feedback? I missed the last part of what you'd said.
What I said
Oh,
was that the main reason for looking into this was that they are using the exact
yeah.
this no, not this, where it is. Mm, the style components that we use. So if we try to uh, use this as a base of, then we can easily pull components from this side, because uh, this is exactly what we do in layer5.io.
Yeah. Nice. Well, that's encouraging. There is, so the briefest of backstories here is that for all of you who are on, I guess as it turns out, it's probably this call. We've talked, this is probably the start of in earnest, the kickoff for Learn Layer 5 for this subsite. So we've talked about this subsite and the need for it for as long as some of you have been around. I mean, for a long time. And what we had done before really getting into this is into like a full-blown subdomain, a subsite, is if you go to layer5.io/learn, there's 3 sections over there. There's different types of content for people who are looking to ramp up on this area of technology. So there's interactive labs like these. And this is where you get a terminal, you can actually run through and type out commands and you're affecting infrastructure in real time. And there's like 8 to 10 labs or so. This is good. And there's 2 categories of labs. This was a start to building out labs. There's more labs to be created. Anyway, that's one type of media or one type of content, learning content that we're trying to enable people with. The other one is there are books listed here. Okay, fine. The third one is, gosh, what is it? Interactive labs, books,
Workshops.
workshops. Workshops take, have multiple labs within inside them. There's many of them are not interactive. Anyway, this is what we have on our collection of learning items until we create this subdomain, learn.layer5.io. And so what's the difference between what we have already and what we're looking at producing? Well, there's a few differences. One of them can be described as the notion that okay, like most of the time that you go to visit a subdomain of a site, if you think about it, either if you recall or from sites that you visited, or if you think about this ongoing as you go to visit different sites, that when you're on a subdomain, you generally, it is not odd to feel like you're on a different site, or to feel like this website that you're looking at is white labeled from some other, it's like an instance of something. So for example, if you were trying to get help from an organization and they have this ticketing system. They're like, hey, why don't you create an issue with us, chat with our people and create an issue. Here's your issue number, come to our support.layer5.io or come to our help desk dot something like what you begin to see fairly obviously a lot of times is that, oh, they're using Zendesk or they're using Freshdesk or they're using some other piece of software here. This is not the same software that they have on their main site. Hence, most of the time, that's the exact reason why they're using a subdomain, because it's a separate piece of software. It's a separate web server. It's a separate web app. You might have an account over there, and that user account might be different from user accounts that you have on other sites that they have. And they're trying to tie together different needs that they have. So one of those types of needs or one of those types of subsites is an LMS, a learning management system. And we've all been in, or maybe some of us are inside of learning management systems right now. Learning management systems are, well, they sound very similar to a content management system, and they are extraordinarily similar to a content management system. A content management system, like an example, is WordPress. WordPress is a blog, though, right? Yes, it is. But what is it? What is most of its features and functionality doing? Well, it's letting different users have accounts on WordPress, like your instance of WordPress or a hosted instance, doesn't matter. And they get different rights, like the right to author a post, to edit posts, to administer the site. And so within there, they can change themes or plugins or publish new posts or edit other people's posts, that kind of thing. And it's all about managing content. WordPress is an example of a content management system. So a learning management system, it too has all of this content. So the way that Tanuj describes these these markdown files, like he's saying, like the approach that they're taking is, well, it's kind of like a content management system. There's a bunch of MD files that have content that need to be displayed and categorized and organized into a hierarchy. And okay, and so part of what a learning management system, how it differs is that usually then, there's an associated user account for sure. Because like not all, when you as a visitor go to WordPress, go to someone's blog and it's running on WordPress, you don't have to have an account to read their blog posts. You don't necessarily have to have an account to consume courses and go through a learning management system. Most of the time, it's ideal that you create one for a couple of reasons. One, because generally, if you're really learning a topic, it's not just you don't sit down for an hour and then you're done. It's like, no, you come back and you come back and you come back and you come back. And when you do, you want to have a user account that can track where you are, whether or not you passed the quiz for that section, whether or not you're going to get a certificate at the end, how many courses you took and how well you did and all that. Like, so this notion of a user account and following that through, the structure to a learning management system goes directly to Tanuj's question, which is, hey, how many layers or levels of learning content might we have here? And off my hip, it's probably three. Three is probably about the right amount of layers. If you like in the workshops that we have on Learn Layer 5 on layer5.io, the workshops are like, one of them is called Introduction to Istio. So there's a topic, that's the workshop. You click to go into the workshop and it says, well, this workshop has 8 labs. So it's kind of a 2-level thing. It's like the fact that we have multiple workshops on the site, that's one level, the workshops level. You as a user drill into one of the workshops and then you have labs inside the workshop. So that's like a 2-level thing. So for us, as we look to build out this a larger site of learn.layer5.io, it probably becomes like 3 layers, because it probably goes something like, well, there might be a learning path that people would go on. It might be this learning path to how to be a service mesh administrator. That might be an example. And to be a service mesh administrator, well, you might need to understand some Kubernetes. You might need to understand a specific service mesh, like the type that you're looking to administer, or general service mesh principles. And you might need to understand meshery. And so in this learning path, how to be a service mesh administrator, you have your first course, which is on Kubernetes. Inside that first Kubernetes course, there are multiple sections or multiple labs, whatever you want, multiple sections of that course, because Kubernetes takes a while. You might have quizzes inside of those. You might have a small certificate at the end, or not, because you're not done with, that was a course, that wasn't a full learning path. The second course in that learning path would be maybe on Istio, on a specific service mesh, and it would have courses. You get done with that. The third course would be on meshery, and so while this might change over time, I think the thought right now is that there would be 3 layers of hierarchy for the learning management system within LearnLayer5.io. Now I just said the learning management system in LearnLayer5.io, and I just defined what a learning management system is a second ago, saying it's this hierarchical organization of your training content, and married with that is this user component, a user account. So as we go to build this, one of our overarching goals is for this not to feel like we've, and I don't know a better term, but the term is like that we've white labeled an instance of some other system. So Tanuj, if you go to discuss.layer5.io, and Vinayak, I see your hand. If you go to discuss.layer5.io, you'll come here, and all of you are going to say, wait a second. This looks like something I've used before. What is this? This is a discourse server. There's a discourse server running at discuss.layer5.io. We are in the process of retheming it so that it feels very familiar to layer5.io, but there will be no question it is not the same site. This is a white labeling. This is a theming, a skinning, we want for learn.layer5.io to look and feel as much like layer5.io as possible. We know that building out a learning management system is difficult. It's not what we're not trying to spend most of our time there. We're trying to get content into users' hands. Hence, a hard look, and so part of our overarching goal for how we want, for the functionality and for what we want Learn Layer 5 to look like is, Tanuj, if you go to learn.hashicorp.com, this site is it's a perfect example of the way in which we would like to present the content to the users, and the level of depth of functionality that we might ultimately have. So that high level was, here's all of HashiCorp's products, and it shows you this in this grid fashion here, and that's about all that's on the page basically. So you get to choose one of their products, and inside of Terraform, they've got these. If you see on the left hand side, it's like they've got this. I don't know how you want to. Anyway, they've got different. I hesitate to use the word learning path or course or section yet, because I'm not sure how they're what the anatomy is here. But point is, this is essentially what we're looking to build. So how do we get there quickly and try to make it look like Layer 5.io? Story. That's where Storybook comes in, and we're evaluating that. So Tanuj, there's some very encouraging things that you're saying, which is Storybook's approach is very, to how their components are designed is very similar to our approach on Layer 5.io. Being able to leverage those components looks like it's certainly an easier fit than other components. And the assessment that we need to make is, is reusing those components, does it get us to the goal quicker than writing new components from scratch or copying some of our existing components and tweaking them. Now, Storybook and what we were looking at over there. So we talked about this user account. Um, Storybook, it doesn't have the notion of a user account, does it?
No.
Um, at the moment, I'm not sure that we have anything planned that will require use of a web server. Like even as people go to sign in with their user account, I don't believe that that's going to require something like Next.js for us. So Vinayak, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, basically, I wanted to like talk about this only about the user account thing. As you mentioned in the last community meeting that you might want to provide service mesh certification and like certification related to the specific learning path or whatever the thing the person might be learning using the website. So for that, I think we will require a different approach in a way in which we are able to have a account. As we can also see in HashiCorp Learn, they have the my account section in which you can look at all the videos that you have watched already and look at your bookmarks. So if we are going to require something like that, we might want to uh, move towards in that direction. Like if we get started with like Gatsby and like with the components that are coming from Storybook, then and then if we decide to move towards the account thing, then it would be a bit difficult to do, I think. But if like base off from the starting that we are going to have a account thing, then that would be better.
Okay. Yeah, and this, but using HashiCorp as an example, it's they're not giving the user much. Like this is just bookmarks, which now for us, if we do say that you've taken and completed a course and here's a persistent copy of your certificate, like you can come back, sign in and get a copy of the cert for having passed the course. Um, do you, yeah, I mean, we'll need a data store. I don't know if that'll require a web server.
Yeah, we will like definitely require to track the progress of the person who is doing the course in order to determine whether he can have a certificate or not.
You know, so having a database accessible is like it would be mandatory.
Yeah,
Uh,
it would definitely require a database and like we can have there are a lot of services for login and like authentication. We can use those, but for tracking their progress, we will require a database.
and so we have both. We have both of those. We have our own login. We have our own uh, well interface for logging in, and then also our own public-facing database. Um, it's what I'm trying to get to is whether or not the use of a web server is necessary. And I don't know that it is because
I'm just not
so
sure like if we should like go with Gatsby for this project or not. Like Gatsby is good. Like Tanuj, if you can like provide some insight if we should use Gatsby or any other framework in case we want to have these type of functionalities.
Get, Gatsby more. If we have minimal use of a web of a database, then maybe we can use Gatsby and use something like Firebase or some. And Gatsby provide basic client side authentication. So if the use is minimal, then it we can use Gatsby. If more, then Gatsby, I don't think Gatsby can be used in that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If the use cases are basically the same thing as the bookmark, like how far along did a user get? What was the last thing that they completed? Like if they took a quiz, basically if they took a quiz or not, um, then it's just retrieving. It's basically the same thing as retrieving these bookmarks, which is certainly feasible without a web server. We went through and looked at other learning management systems, other lab-based systems. The one that came the closest was one from Google. I forget the name of it, but the restyling of it. Oh, thank you, Anita. The restyling of it would require so much work. It wasn't feasible. So we do want it to look as much like Layer5 IO as possible. I do, yeah. Anyway, for my part, I don't think that. I think we can achieve it with Gatsby. Like, I don't think that if we ever arrive at the point by which we would need to have a web server in there, that's fine. Like the converting over to leveraging that is additive and doesn't detract from the components and things that those things that we've built. So it can be a progression in that regard. Like if we had exactly this, what HashiCorp has today, if we had this, I'm not sure that we would be adding anything, like other than the bit about a certificate. And that doesn't necessarily require, depends on how we want to administer the tests. That doesn't necessarily require. So the question comes back to reusing Storybooks components versus taking some of the ones that we have now and augmenting them. The conclusion of, I guess what I'm hearing is that the use of Storybooks components is quite feasible. And that if we moved, so how much of Storybooks, are we looking at individual components, Tanuj, or are we looking at more of a whole system that we're taking over?
We can individual components also, and this.
Uh-oh, you say it again, you cut out.
Like like the structure I've previously said, like how they are leveraging Gatsby and MD files to create this structure, and also these components, cards and other these type of things.
Okay, okay, good. Thanks for investigating this, guys. This is very helpful. If we switch over and Austin goes through some of the designs, we might get an idea as to all of the functionality that we're looking to include, what that might take, and how far off, reuse of Storybooks components are. And so, Austin, do you want to walk people through?
Yes. Yes. We start with the main page where we tried bringing the resemblance of the current learn page by putting the don't learn alone and a few other things. Yeah, we just listed out all the current courses, guides, and all. and also created a mobile view. Then we proceeded to the guides, having the get started, the popular section, the new and the featured courses with regards to all courses related to Mesri, and and just listing the main content of Mesri, main content of that guide, or in this case Mesri, which we are using. So on to the next one. When let's say you select get started on its own, or let's say set up Mesri. Set up Mesri as guides to take you through, where you see Mesri tutorials. If the tutorial is a video, interactive, is a slide. So we listed all of them into categories, and those, and you're able to, just like on the learn.ashicop, you're able to bookmark any course you want. This time you're able to bookmark them. So in case you want to come back to the courses, you can just come back to them. Then let's say you select a course you want to take, start getting guides on it. For example, like on the current interactive labs on Layer 5, we have places where you can copy the codes, and at the same time just go through the guide, and you see you've successfully installed Measure. So we created it in a way whereby it has most of the features in the current Layer 5 designs, and it looks more like a learning management system. So it follows the niche, and we're also able to create an authentication system using the Mesri cloud. This was updated to to handle the authentication, just like we have on Mesri currently. We just use the same components on Mesri, so very similar. Then it's with this section, we have a section that looks almost similar to the we have a section really similar to almost the Lending Ashcore, but we tried we are working towards iterating on adding a bit more features to the user accounts, whereby they can check other informations, like let's say certificates they've earned and all that. So it doesn't look
And hey, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, did you want to ask a question?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no problem.
all right. So that's mostly the current designs we have, and with more iterations, we'll bring out more features, and if needed, we'll bring out more features in the designs. So we've created both the mobile and the web applications, just so we can move fast and build fast with reusable components.
I think it's Vinayak and Tanuj, as you guys look over that. Any significant hurdles jump to mind?
Not much. If we have the top layout ready, then after that it shouldn't be much difficult.
And Vinayak, I think the things that you're saying, I think, are accurate. Like, hey, to be like, if we get into the, I think it's mostly the accounts section. If we get into there fairly deeply, use of a web server is going to be necessary?
Yeah, if we are like looking into adding quizzes and like tracking the progress and providing certificates, then we will surely require a database and a web server. But like if we are able to manage, there are services like Firebase. We can start to like test things with it initially, and if it fulfills our requirement, then we can even implement it.
Well, no, yeah. I mean, so I want to be really specific and say a use of a database, yes. Use of an identification and an ID system, yes, to be able to auth the user. But use of a web server, no. I'm still not seeing where that's necessary based on the use cases, even for the labs. I'm sorry, for the quizzes and for the certificates. Certificate is just a link specific to that user to a PDF or to
Right.
the cert. Like, and that just requires that they're authed so they can get to, so that the PDF that's shown is the one that's appropriate for them. It would be a hyperlink that's in a database that, like if you wanted to protect it specific to that user and stuff, like, okay, maybe that would, but in this case, like, it's not really about protecting the certificate because for the most part, we're going to encourage them to show it publicly.
Yeah, over on LinkedIn and other platforms
Yeah.
like Coursera allows.
Yeah. And for the quizzes, it's like all of the questions will be known in advance. The answers aren't published. It's more just recording and storing the score that they got on each quiz, like the answers that that we evaluated. Like, yeah, if we want to keep the answers very private and not risk any exposure in JavaScript of those, then use of a web server somewhere is probably necessary. If those answers are stored in JavaScript, like it's less about people cheating their way through it. If we really want to administer an actual certification exam and process like it really would be a totally different system because it's because then you want to verify that the person was who they say they are, that they weren't looking off screen to get some answers from somewhere else. And like it's a whole different ballgame. But
Right.
This is I'm glad that you're bringing up these points because this is exactly what we need to think through is like, or is there a use case in there where, where it's really good, it's going to require that we're running a web server. And we're definitely, we're touching on a few where I think we're drawing the line saying, hey, we're not going to do that functionality. So we're okay without it. But if we didn't have this conversation, we wouldn't know where that line is. And yep, should we cross it at some point, use of Firebase or use of, or running a web server might become, we can do those things. So the database, no problem. We've got, and in part, these aren't problems. The identity system and the database, those are both used. Well, the database is used today for Layer5 IO for doing some REST requests to get some things. The identity system isn't. It's used for meshery, but can be used generically. So this is good. Okay, well, as we get toward the end of today's discussion, the question becomes, all right, so hey, what are we going to do next? What's to do next? It's like, well, I think we'll probably end up skipping the discussion today because we've been discussing that for a bit. As we wrap up on Learn Layer 5, let's continue on the path that we're on. Like we should go forth and see if, what it looks like to use Storybook let's crack open the design spec, try to write down a couple of things about really what we consider that structure to be. Is it learning paths, courses, sections? Is it 3 levels or is it 2? And write down any other considerations that we need to factor in for use of Storybook? And by the way, I know it's confusing when I say use of Storybook, because Storybook itself is something else, but Storybook's Gatsby-based learning site is what I mean. That's what we're interested in. So there's a number of you all that are likely to help here and to jump in here. Tanuj and Vinayak, and Austin. If we like, so I want to try to set a couple of goals if we can. That overview page, it's a grid of cards, a grid of a collection of. Can we begin to break down some of these items and hand out for others to try their hand at?
Yes.
Yeah, that we can start creating the individual components parallelly. If we have the structure ready by then after that it would be just querying the contents from the MD or MDX file and putting into those components.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very enticing proposition, because it's just, it's the same style system that we're doing now, same style. And as a matter of fact, it means not only reuse of the components, but it also means reuse of some of the content. Because those interactive labs, those are some of the same interactive labs that we will use ongoing. So okay. Anything specific that we can, I suspect there's a little bit of work that needs to be done in advance of Cynthia or Blossom or Aditya or others, Yash or whomever, to be able to, like, are we at a point by which we can take one or two of the individual components and start to restyle them while some of that other work is going on?
Maybe we need to first start the basic side, but and you can do something like this: start the basic side, then uh, the folder structure can be similar to how we are doing in layer 5, and inside the components folder we can just create the components. Those can be individual issues. For now we can keep those uh, at the main index page just for viewing, and after we have the structure ready, then we can start uh, using those components exactly how we plan to use.
Okay, yeah, so it sounds like we can at least have a couple of components from Austin's design that we can take and export those designs, create a GitHub issue or two for the creation of those components, but leveraging, like, probably what makes sense is when that GitHub issue is created, to identify what component is being used that maps to this one from the Storybook site. And then when whoever picks up that issue can, knows what tools to use, what components to restyle.
Yeah, yes, the first thing would be we need to start a Gatsby site and bring over some of those things like component row layouts from our existing layer 5 site first.
And so okay, good. Tanuj, the way that you're envisioning this is the learn.layer5.io, is that in a separate repo? or maybe a better way of asking is, you just said to create a new Gatsby site, and I was considering that it would, or I was thinking it was in the same Gatsby site, but maybe that's not feasible.
Yeah, it's feasible, but I is it feasible for the how later on, how when we go to deploy it? I don't know about that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know if it was a breaking. So if we go past 2 levels of organization, then we might get ourselves into trouble with trying to reuse the same Gatsby site. That might be the point by which we would need to shift into a separate one.
Yeah, like we will have to change how Gatsby node work. Gatsby node.js file works for structuring learn.layer5, which will not be possible if we use the same repo.
Got you. Okay. That's a great line to know. So the Gatsby node.js file, basically, if we go to 3 layers, we need to shift in, we need to have a separate Gatsby instance. If we have a separate Gatsby instance, I suppose that it's technically possible, like that we would probably have a separate repo then. Right. And it might be the case that we might need a separate repo anyway for.
We can have a separate branch like we did for Layer5.
Yeah, that makes sense to me as well. This is more of an area of ignorance probably for me, and that is if the URL that people are going to use to get there, if it's this learn dot, do we have that level of control to get people pointed to that other?
I think therefore that will have to make the structures and all possible so that it resolves to that.
Okay. This is an area to explore. The other area is number. Cool. All right. Do we want to put names on some of these? I think my name might be helpful on the number of layers. What does that taxonomy look like? It's just for the layers part. Does anyone want to explore this DNS and GitHub pages?
If
Tanuj.
okay, sure. I was going to ask something else, but okay.
Yeah,
then,
if it's a smaller thing, then I can take it. I don't know how much it would.
Yeah, for Cynthia, Elizabeth, and Blossom, Aditya, I guess I'm making this general assumption that this is one of a number of initiatives, but I'm making the general assumption that this initiative is of interest to all of you. Like, and the notion of trying to reuse components, move them over, building out the structure of the site and things, that this is of interest. And assuming that that's the case, Cynthia.
One thing, if we are moving to a different branch, then wouldn't it be better if we go to a different repo altogether? Because we will anyway going to clean up that branch.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. That like I think we're going to find that DNS is a challenge for us, that we won't really be able to get to where we're trying to go without having to do some funky business if we leave it in the same repo. And that, Tanuj, to your point, in a separate branch in the same repo, I think we'll also be challenged when we try to statically statically build the learn portion of things and the layer 5 IO portion of things, and have those presented in the same, served by GitHub pages in the same way. We're not afforded that much control there. So the odds are against us being able to keep it in the same repo. The frustrating bit about that is that, yes, some of the same content might get replicated or duplicated. Not that it's hard to duplicate that. It's just the sustaining amount of it, of like if something gets updated. We might be able to do clever things around Git. What is it? A Git submodule potentially, or making references. Anyway, I think those things are surmountable, but yeah, there's some aspects of this that GitHub itself, since we're using GitHub pages as the publishing vehicle, that we're constrained. And we're also relying on GitHub's DNS and what they expose to you for capabilities. Yeah, anyway. Okay, well, as we go to wrap up today, Cynthia, I think we'd almost gotten some words out of your microphone earlier.
Sorry?
And Cynthia, we were, is this a project of interest to you? This Learn Layer 5?
Yes, it is, yeah. Yes.
So Tanuj, so Vinayak, or Tanuj, let's start styling a component. Knowing that we don't quite know where it's going to go just yet, and overall hierarchy of things, but let's do a prototype. Maybe we can get Cynthia involved and the rest of the folks here.
Like prototyping the individual components like cards.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that we should do in the same repo, layer 5.
I suppose so. Yeah, just as to the extent that the point of the prototype is to identify, it might be throwaway work, but it would be to identify what boundaries we're pushing up against, what dependencies we might have. If we're looking at reusing some of the same style and other things, like if all of that is known and it's just more writing that into a design spec where we're saying, here's why it's a separate repo, here's how we're going to try to keep alignment of color schemes and other things, then that's fine as well. So do you guys think that there's any value to prototyping in the same repo, moving over a component or two?
So the thing is, like, till the time the structure is ready, or the different repo or all the configuration is done, then it can be done on the same repo. Like, we can just create a test page or some page where the components can be tested that are been tested. So like it won't be hard to just pick that component up and drop into the new repo once it's created. What do you think, Tanuj?
Yeah.
Okay.
Till that, parallelly, I or Vinayak can work on getting the structure ready, and the components can be on the same layer 5 repo.
Nice. Okay. Well, let's see if we can clarify a little bit in a spec. It doesn't have to be. It won't be a full blown spec, but that'll help it's always hardest to get the project initially going and formed, and what are we using and doing, and what's the vision, and how do we and so if this call felt at all painful to anyone, that's totally natural. It's it takes a little while, but in the meantime, we'll be getting this other site published, I'm sure.
So I just wanted to ask a thing, like anyone aware about an HTTP 422 issue?
HTTP 402.
422. So it's like that's the problem we are getting for that image. So for the PNG we just talked on last meeting.
Did you see that 422 listed in the logs?
Yeah, they are like it's whenever you try to upload, then the response is 422 and we don't get. So I didn't see them in logs. I saw them in somewhere in console, or I guess.
So here's the issue that Josh is trying to work through on discuss.layer5.io is if you try to upload a PNG anywhere, even though it's a valid image, the site right now apparently is responding with an error code 422. And so anyone experienced a I haven't, Josh. I don't recall working through a 422.
Yeah, so like I tried to find, so yeah, you can see that error.
So there's an
I
upload.
tried to find some solution, but I wasn't able to. I didn't have any success, so I thought if anyone would have come across, then it would be of help. But yeah, I'll then go ahead to find it out.
This will be really helpful when you put that on to the open issue that you have as well.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool. But other than that, like we're really not very far away from this being ready. So Josh is working through some final items. One of those is, if I can figure out how to log out, here we go, is that the site now supports authing with any of these three, or just using your email. So that's great.
So for the customizing part, I think I'll just set up and talk up with Blossom or Aditya if they're interested, and we can just have those customizations done by the time I figure out for those issues.
Okay.
So if if you're interested, then you can just DM on Slack.
Sure, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I know we're over time, but just very briefly, Vinayak, did you want to say something quickly on the web-based, the newcomers forum?
Yeah, currently Elizabeth is working on the actual form for the newcomers. I just had one question that we were discussing, that potentially the Slack bot sends a link to everyone who joins the Slack channel, right?
It does. Right. Mm-hmm.
With the polling. So what I thought was that we can maybe send the same link to everyone, regardless of the fact they're a contributor or just a visitor or a user of layer 5, and within the not the actual form, on a web page they will like get different paths regarding what their area of interest is. So if someone is a contributor, they will be redirected to the newcomers form or the contributor resources, and if someone is a potential visitor to layer 5 who isn't aware about what layer 5 does, he can look over a page which briefly explains it. And if someone is a user, we can like redirect him to like a form like for contacting us, or for like the one we have for when to deploy layer 5. So that was my question, like regarding the flow we can have after someone gets the link.
I think that that's reasonable, because when they join Slack, we won't know necessarily if they're there as a user or if they're there as a contributor, and not accounting for that logic inside of the automation that welcomes them and sends them the link makes sense that we wouldn't know. And so you can't really customize the message right there. Rather, you can present them a form like you're saying here that lets them self-identify why they're here. It would fall between two things, not a visitor, but either a user or a contributor, those two things. And yeah, that's helpful. I think it provides a good experience. Like, because if you're just here as a user, you click on a link and the form is asking you about the languages that you know, or that you which projects you're interested in contributing to. If it's really oriented toward a contributor, it begins to feel awkward for them, and they might feel like they don't belong here. And that's not the case. It's just that they needed to be presented with links to documentation, links to interactive labs, or I think bifurcating the flow like that, that's probably really appropriate. And it
Yeah.
means that
Yeah, so Elizabeth is currently working on the actual form which was created by, like the mock-up of which was created by Augustine. So if you can like review it, and like you can I have the link to it.
nice. Okay, yeah, I'll after this call I'll review it. But that makes a lot of sense. Like it can make the language easier on the form if they go two different directions. It can be more welcoming. So cool. I've got the link. I'll look just after we end the call, so as not to make everyone wait. But
Sure.
nice. Okay. That's it. We're only 20 minutes after. Oh, good. Nice. Well, they're talking about two new sites and a whole new newcomers forum. It's pretty good. Pretty good. Okay. All right. That's a wrap. See everybody next Monday or on the community call. Okay. Bye all. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Bye guys.
No.